project, what we're going to do is we are going to talk about a mug, a clay mug, and you will be making something similar to this. This is a slab style clay mug. This is actually made by a student here at Little Falls Community School, 8th grader, and they decided to create more of a wood-like tiki sculpture within their mug. So they added some different features, or you could do something like a mug. This student created a spoon that goes inside the mug. He was hoping to create the illusion of stirring coffee, so he created a top on his mug as well. So his is not necessarily as functional, but yours can be functional, or it can be more of a sculptural piece. So what we're going to do first is we are going to start about some of the things you need to know with using clay. When you start with your clay, you need to wedge your clay. So that's one term we're going to go over this week, is wedge. And what you do for wedging is you actually just kind of knead the clay like you would dough, any type of dough. And when you're kneading, you just roll it up on itself. So you push with the palms of your thumbs, roll it back up, and then turn it. And what this is doing is it is creating a way to push out all of the air bubbles. For our mug, we will be making mugs by hand building them and creating a slab method. So what I need you to do is, with your clay, you want to create a long tube of clay versus a ball of clay, because we want our clay to go lengthwise so that we can create a slab. And then what you'll do is you can tap it a little bit with the palm of your hand, flip it over. Tap, flip it over. You want to flip it every so often, because if you don't, it will get stuck to the table. That's looking pretty good. So do you see how it's longer than it is wide? That's what we want, because our goal is to create a rectangle. So then once you have that, the next few things that you will use is a rolling pin, and I also have dowels. These dowels, what they do, they offer you a way to measure the width of your clay and allow the width to be the same throughout versus having some thinner spots and some thicker spots. So the next thing you can do is you can just roll. You don't want to press very hard, because again it could get stuck to the table, and you will flip it over. So you want to roll a little bit and flip. Roll. Now as you'll notice, I'm getting to a thickness where I want my rolling pin to be able to sit on these dowels. This then creates a path to make sure everything is the same thickness. All right, and that looks pretty good. This slab that I created here is probably long enough to also create my base. To start with your base, the next thing you can do is you can take any circular object, depending on the size you want, and place it on your clay. This will be the base of my mug. I am using an X-Acto knife, but we have other tools that you can use as well if you like them better. And there I have my base. My next step, which is creating a rectangle for my cylinder that will become the mug itself. That is a cylinder form, so that will become the mug. So I'm going to start with the widest. We'll start this way. I'm going to take a ruler and I want to trim across one side to make it even. This clay is much longer than I actually need. Now what I want to do is I want to be able to have the same width at the bottom, the middle, and the top. So I'm going to go through and measure and see where I can measure out. 4 inches is okay up here, so I'll kind of make a little dash. I can also do 4 inches in the middle, so my 4 inches is looking pretty good. So I will go with that. Depending on how tall you want your mug would depend on how many inches you cut. So I will do 4, and we'll see how that looks. And then we'll go, okay, so there is my mug. That should be the same at the bottom and the end. If you look, I accidentally made a little mistake. I cut into my clay. One thing is, I know this clay is too long, so I don't necessarily have to worry about that end. So what I'm going to do is I will cut that off. I'm going to line my ruler up, and I want to make sure that it's parallel and nice and straight. One way you can do that is to create an L with your hand. You can kind of make a line, and then we'll cut that off, because that's just extra. All right, then the next thing I want to do is I'm going to check my length to see how long I actually need my clay to be. One way you will do this then is to take your clay, set it against your base, wrap it around, and then you can kind of measure. Okay, I'm going to draw a thin line here where they meet. So I've got all this that was extra. You can see my line. Once I have that, I can now come back and cut. So now I've got my slab, which should be the length of my base. And I can double check that. So we'll just set it up. If it's a little bit longer, which mine is, you can trim off just a little bit more. It's kind of trial and error. Perfect. Now, the next thing I want you to do is, if you look, when we put our clay together, they butt up, which is fine. I like to make the seam a little bit thinner. So what I'd like you to do is you are going to cut at an angle on the left-hand side. So let's say you cut a 45-degree angle and the end of your knife is pointing towards the right side of the ceiling. When you go to the right side, you will cut the same exact way. 45-degree angle, keeping your knife at the same angle, pointing up to the right. What this allows for is when you put it together, it creates this seam where the two can lay on top of each other nicely. The next step you need to know is slip and score. Scoring is when you take your clay and you scratch the edges, anywhere that you are going to attach your clay. I'm just using a fork. You can also use a score tool. So I'm also going to go along the bottom and the edges. The next thing you're going to use is slip. This is what slip looks like. Slip is basically a water and clay mixture, and it comes out somewhat muddy. What you'll do with slip is it acts like a glue. So you will put that along your edges anywhere that you're connecting. You don't need to make. Let's attach these pieces together. And now what I'm going to do is press my base, or my edges of my cylinder, onto my base. Once you have those connected, what you'll do is support the inside of your mug, and you will weld your seam together. Basically what that means is I am pulling clay from one side to the other to erase my seam. And then the last part is to smooth your base as well, because that has a seam. My inside is welded, my outside is welded. And what you can do next is we are going to create what's called a coil. A coil is a long, snake-like piece of clay. Coils are nice for being able to attach things, create designs, and also to support seams. So what you'll do is you'll create a coil by rolling your clay. And then you're going to roll it between two fingers. And I call walking my hands out, where I pull my fingers across, because the goal is to have the coil be the same thickness throughout. So once you have your coil made, this is for the inside of my mug, where the base and the bottom of the sides meet. So I'm going to take a little slip, add that around the bottom. I will place my coil inside, right along that edge. And then I will weld that together. And there you have the start of your clay mug. We will let this set up for a little bit, get leather hard, and then we will learn about how to pull a handle.